It's not about who you are. It's about making a difference. And many times you can see a true leader out of a situation of challenges and problems. And that type of leader, when people see darkness, that leader, they see light. When people see problems, a true wise leader, they see solution. When people see crisis, emergency, impossibility, a true mature leader, they see. Hi everyone, I hope you are doing well. You are connected here to Luyanda Fatuse, one of the strategic consultants at BSLI Group. And the topic today we're going to speak about is poor governance due to leadership crisis. Allow us to follow the presentation. I think it's crucial importance. In the next slide, I will speak about break it down. You said the topic is about poor governance due to leadership crisis. I like to zoom upon what's understand first of all poor governance. What is poor governance? And then afterwards we can go to leadership crisis and break down it also between what is leadership and what is crisis. Before we can able to go to the word poor governance, we have to be on the same understanding that what is governance. Governance is an action or manner of governing a state, of governing an organization, governing a business, governing a family, governing a church ministry, governing a school, governing a university, governing a sport club, under the guard, whatever it might be, which means what the act or process of governing or overseeing the control and direction of an organization. That is governance in itself. It means what? Where we find leaders coming together means what? With one core mandate to oversee the control and direction of an organization. We spoke in the previous teachings where I spoke about crucial importance of understanding governance. There's different types of governance structures, and the crucial importance of governance we have to look upon. Any form of governance, there is an issue about authority and decision making and accountability to God. So, but the crucial importance, what's the opposite of governance? Poor governance. So what is poor governance? Poor governance refers to the situation where any given organization is ineffective with God. That is poor governance. When any given organization exercise their control or direction over any given organization in an ineffective manner, that's poor governance or bad governance, or lacks the capacity to address the organizational challenges. That can also be due to poor governance. Now we can see the correlation between poor governance due to leadership crisis. Governance has to do with leadership, has to do with leaders with God. Means what? If the leaders of any given organization lack the capacity of leading any given organization, it can lead to poor governance. The effects of poor governance is due to what? Weak boards. Means what? How you can see the evident effect of poor governance is either weak board of directors, lack of transparency in these given institutions, as well as ineffective risk management, as well as conflict of interest, and all of these can lead to increase of corruption, poor organizational growth, as well as disastrous or failed organization due to issue about poor governance. But the root cause, some of them reasons why we can find this issue about poor governance can due to be leadership crisis. Means what? One of the most important things about leadership crisis, we have to go back and look at the issue about governance and poor governance. There's a correlation between poor governance and leadership crisis in any given organization. Let's go to the next slide now. But I thought it's crucial importance for us to be on the same page before we can have a better comprehension about this issue about poor governance and leadership crisis and how these two are intertwined. Now, I want to break this word about leadership crisis and also explain it from a perspective of leadership as well as perspective of crisis. What is leadership crisis? I mean, it occurs when the teams questions the leadership guidance, the leaders' guidance. I mean, any given organization, set families, they have leaders, church ministries have leaders, government may have leaders, public sector have leaders, public entities have leaders, business have leaders, and any given organization that leaders, when you find the stakeholders, especially the direct stakeholders, they start to question the leadership guidance of the given leadership, is constantly critical or feels that there is imposing ideas without consensus, means what sometimes you might find. I said leadership, poor governance is due to weak governance or leaders lacking the capacity to lead the institution in the right direction. And the common thing that brings all groups of people together is a vision, also the mission statement and the purpose statement, why a given organization exists in the God. So a leadership crisis happens when there's consensus or there's there's different direction of thinking regarding the common vision and mission statement of the organization. I think it's crucial important to understand then what is leadership then? Leadership is an action of leading a group of people or of an organization. As good importance, I said in the previous teachings, any person has an inherent ability to lead, but that doesn't mean what that ability has been refined to a mature level. Means what leadership is the action of leading any group of people within any given organization. However, there are different styles of leadership. There are democratic leadership style, there are autocratic leadership style, there are transformation leadership style. With those type of leadership, I will do in another series with God. But crucially important to understand, we have to be in the same place to understand that leadership is the action of leading a group of people. In any organization, there is a group of people that God, irrespective of a different styles people adopting, and able to meet the common vision and mission statement organization. Also, leadership is also the state or position of being a leader. Leadership is also what? The state or condition of being a leader or in a position of leadership, which means the organization can either prosper or fail under such type of leadership. Several organizations, their success is determined based upon the leaders. The failure of many organizations is due to the leaders. We said, if the organization, leaders in the organization adopt a poor governance style, it means what? Weak governance. They have lack of capacity to lead an organization, means what? That can result to the failure, or disastrous state of that given organization. And it's also important to understand that leadership, it is the leaders of the organization. Just to summarize upon it, leadership is the leaders of an organization. But the greatest danger to any given organization, both private sector, public sector, non-profit organization, is when the leadership is divided into different groups or camps. That is the main failure, especially in government or political parties, or the failure of non-government organization is when the leadership has to do with leaders. But the greatest danger is when these type of leaders, they don't have one mind, they don't have one thought, there's no one vision. They have different type of viewpoints towards what direction organizations must take, and this is due to division, and that can able to be very disastrous towards the success of the given organization with God. Now, if you look on the next slide, I want to speak about the issue about crisis. Remember, I was tackling the issue upon to say poor governance due to leadership crisis in God. I explained to you, first of all, it's crucially important to understand what is leadership. I explained leadership. Now it's crucially important to understand what is crisis and bring all of this thing together. Crisis refers to a contingency, refers to a disaster, it refers to emergency as a result of a lack of a forethought or foresight. Sometimes crisis can be due to several leaders are not prudent in making decisions. They don't give careful thought to the future. It means what? They lack forethought or they lack foresight and make poor decisions. Remember we said when we did the issue about governance structure, understanding governance, I said the abbreviation of other. Other means what? Authority has to also do with decision making. If you are a leader in governance, you have to make decisions, and sometimes several organizations find themselves in a crisis situation. Means what? In a contingency contingency, emergency, disaster due to poor decision making, because the leaders, they lack the foresight or the forethought from the leaders, as well as inexperienced leaders. This is the lack of foresight. It can also be due to inexperience of leaders. I said earlier on, due to leaders that don't have the capacity to lead organizations with God. Crisis is also a situation and extremely difficult or dangerous, especially when there are many problems. Leaders, the difference about leadership is about when you mature leader, you know how to handle risk. You know how to to usher, to guide that given organization out of that problem. An experienced type of driver, an experienced type of pilot, whether for a ship, an experienced type of pilot, whether for any aircraft. They know even in the thunderstorms how to still to make sure there's safe landing, because why? They are mature in leadership, how to lead in the midst of the turmoil, midst of the outward situation with God. So leadership has to do, you will have to deal with problems. You will have to deal with challenges. Even if you look at leadership, we do, your macro environment as well as your micro environment, it poses both unto you threats as well as opportunities, as well as strengths and weaknesses. Leaders is to say, how do we turn the weaknesses of organization into strength, and how do you deal with the threats, the challenges that the organization experience, and turn it into opportunities to God. I think the challenge is when we have inexperienced leaders, or leaders who don't have the capacity to lead them, they cannot able to address or turn threats into opportunities, or deal with the weaknesses and turn those weaknesses into strength for the organization, because they lack foresight, and as a result of it, sometimes they make poor decisions and respond and not in an adequate manner towards the seasons of problems or challenges. There's always there around regard due to the macro environment. I think Christ has been notes the turning point for better or worse. That's about leaders, decision making. Said the issue, the key zooming factors here is about decision making. Sometimes if we lack prudence, if we lack insight of both the internal and external environment, we can make poor decisions to the God. So I think at that point, I'm just trying to say the reason why we have poor governance, the reason why several institutions are failing, are about to go down, or they downsize, is sometimes it can be to leadership crisis. The leadership crisis is like we do not have the capacity of the right leaders, of good leaders, wise leaders who can apply prudence in making decisions and give careful thought about both the internal and external environment before they make decisions. They are much well informed about the environment where they're operating in regard. We're living in a changing environment, globalization, the world is changing continually. We need a different type of leaders, not leaders who are reactive and always deal with crisis situation. And some of this crisis is self-imposed due to poor governance. I think it's also important to have a comprehension upon that, because leaders can either make the organization, or they can make sure that the given organization where they touch upon can fall to God. So some leadership crisis denotes the turning point for better or worse. Hence, it is a difficult or dangerous situation that needs serious attention from leadership. Now, my last slide in my conclusion, speaking about this topic about poor governance due to leadership crisis, is leadership crisis can cause great instability in any given organization. We have seen it all over the world. In Africa, we find ourselves that the problem about Africa is leadership crisis. Understand? The failure of Africa is leadership crisis. The failure of any given country or business is leadership crisis. Because why? If you look at Africa as an example, it is, very wealthy in natural resources, but the problem is is leadership crisis, and it poses a great danger. So the problem about leadership crisis, it poses a great danger to the organization and its stakeholders, including the people who live in it, which can lead to a decisive change in the political, social, technological, legislative, or international or global affairs due to leadership crisis. The problem we're experiencing in society and communities is due to leadership crisis in any given community or society. Leadership is the ability of an individual or group of people to influence and to guide followers or members of an organization, society, or team. We need good leaders. We need good, wise leaders who can make prudent decisions and able to turn around this crisis of poor governance, bad governance, and also the issue of to take us out of crisis. We need to turn around to make sure that people have the right capacity to lead others and not to let them serve, because those who don't have the capacity of leadership, they will lack foresight, they will lack forethought, and they will make poor decisions at the detrimental, not just for themselves, at the detrimental of the country as well as organizations and the people they lead. I think I just want to conclude to say to you, it's of crucial importance to understand that leadership in its true sense is about making a difference. It's not about you. It's not about pride. It's not about who you are. It's about making a difference. And many times you can see a true leader out of a situation of challenges and problems. And that type of leader, when people see darkness, that leader, they see light. When people see problems, a true wise leader, they see solution. When people see crisis, emergency, impossibility, a true mature leader, they see a solution out of it, how they can turn a situation out of a disastrous thing to an opportunity. They don't see threat. Some leaders, good leaders, they're delightful when they see threats, because they understand to say inherent nature in them, they can able to turn those threats in opportunities for benefits, not just of themselves, but of society at large and again. I think it's about leaving a legacy. Leadership is about leaving a legacy, not just for oneself, but for the greater good of others in society at large. Whether you are leading a team or a company or a government department, public entity, a family, a church ministry, a school, university, or a sport club, or any movement, political party, remember, I think it's crucially important for us to remember that true leadership is defined not by power, but by the impact, the significant impact that you have made in your sign domain. I hope it makes sense to understand to say, when we look at poor governance due to leadership crisis, we have to take all of these things into account to say, what is governance? Is the action or manner of governing any given organization. And we look to say, what is the opposite of good governance? Has to do with the first section of ineffective. Anyone who runs and any given organization who have control, who oversee control or direction of any given organization in an ineffective manner, it will lead to poor governance. And sometimes it is due to that those type of leadership do not have the capacity, to able to effectively have control or lead the given organization and trust them with them. This can be due to them appointing themselves, even the way they've been placed in position of authority was not to a rightful process. It was they self-electing themselves. And the result of it, when board members self-elect themselves, that board is weak. There's weak governance structures we spoke about. There's lack of transparency in any given such organization. There's conflict of interest because their self-interest, their greed of misusing resources prevail more than the interest of society at large or for the organization. I think the leading of it, while we see that evidently both in private sector and public sector, any given society, is increase of corruption, poor growth within that given institution, and the end result of it is a failure of the organization or state or government or business. Hoping that makes sense to you and I have a more comprehension to understand. The issue I want to speak about is governance, is good governance. We promote good governance, but we have to understand also the time we're living in. there's so much about poor governance due to leadership crisis. And the question is like, if we step upon, to lead an organization, do we understand the principles, the pillars of governance as to do with accountability, as to do with decision making, as to do with also accountability. Thank you very much. Hope it makes sense. Follow us.